What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Purple and Gold podcast. Today, we are having another mock draft, 3-round mock draft here. And today, it's going to be focusing on the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team who currently holds the number one pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, finishing the season 3-14. Obviously, there was a lot of bad things going on, but it seems like it's all figured out. And it seems like there is half of a culture switch. Obviously, Jaguars fans are still upset with Trent Baalke leading the way at GM. But I think Doug Peterson was a phenomenal hiring, and I don't think that they could have hired anyone better for the development of Trevor Lawrence, who was a generational quarterback, in my opinion. We just haven't seen it yet because of Urban Meyer and many other things that are going on with the organization. But all of that is out of the way. So I'm really optimistic about what this team has in store for the future. And they made some pretty big splashes here in free agency considering the tons and tons of cap space that they had available to use. So let's go over the roster real quick before we head into this 3-round mock draft. Trevor Lawrence, quarterback. He is the franchise guy. All right, moving on. James Robinson, Travis Etienne. This is going to be a great 1-2 punch. I know a lot of people didn't like the Etienne pick just because James Robinson is already there. But I think if they can use him in the proper way, and when I mean that, I mean being an effective runner and also using him as a pass catching running back, I think that there's going to be a lot of packages that you can use Etienne in. So I'm pretty optimistic about what he can do, the former first round pick in the 2020 NFL draft. 2021 NFL draft. At wide receiver, now Christian Kirk, he can make a ton of money. I think right now he's making about 18 without all of those incentives being put into his contract. So he's still getting paid at the higher end for a wide receiver, but I mean, I think this is a good short-term decision, but I think when you have to start paying him that much down the line and he doesn't produce like you expect him to, it's going to look like a huge waste of money. So, I don't know. Kirk could blossom a little more now that, there aren't as many options here in Jacksonville considering how many there were in Arizona. But I don't know. We'll see. They needed a receiver. They brought one in. And speaking of receivers being brought in, Zay Jones was also brought in from the Raiders. Marvin Jones has always been productive, a pretty consistent player throughout his entire career. And Laviska Shenault, the former second-round pick, has been brought up in trade talk, so I don't know how much longer he'll be on the team. But I like him. He's a guy who's able to create a lot of separation despite the lack of speed that he possesses. So I don't know. I think a team would definitely be interested in trading for Laviska Shenault. Would I be surprised if he's still a Jacksonville Jaguar heading into week one? Not at all. The guy is really talented. Evan Engram is brought in on a 1-year deal, fully guaranteed, I believe, at $9 million. This is a good, bridge tight end, I guess. This is a guy who still needs to go out and prove himself, and he could definitely be a Jaguar for a few more years after this if he, plays well. And the tight end position is used a lot by Doug Peterson, so he's going to have a huge opportunity here to break the bank next season, but he's got to catch the ball. And I don't know. A lot of weird things going on because Dan Arnold was traded for C.J. Henderson last year. That made absolutely no sense, so I don't know. Now he's the backup. I don't get it. Another thing I don't understand, Cam Robinson was brought back on the franchise tag. Now, the only thing I'm assuming is that they don't want to take a tackle with the first pick, so they're just going to keep Cam Robinson there for another year. I don't know. You don't pay a guy, the franchise tag type money if he's not going to start. And obviously, I think if the plan is to bring in a tackle, you wouldn't do that. So, I don't know. Now, would I be surprised if Trent Baalke takes a tackle number one? Not at all. It would be the most Trent Baalke thing ever. Brandon Sheriff was a huge signing. This is one of the best guards in the game when he's on the field. Obviously, age has hit him a little bit, but still very productive. And I don't know. I mean, I wish he was a Viking sometime. Brandon Linder has been a solid center. Ben Barch, that's the guy who made the weird smoothie at the combine. And then Jawan Taylor, the second-round tackle out of Florida. So, I don't know. He's not that great, but, he's all right, I guess, at the moment. The defensive line, this is a 3-4 team, so you have Malcolm Brown, Devon Hamilton, Dwayne Smoot. Those guys are still in their 20s, some in the higher 20s, some in the lower 20s, but I don't know. Then you bring in also Folaranzu Fadukasi from the Jets. That's a name that a lot of people don't know, but he's been one of the better players on that team for the past few years, so I think that that's going to be pretty worth it down the line. So I don't know. I'm excited for that team. on the defensive side of the ball. You continue with Josh Allen, who is highly productive, when he has a little bit more help. And then Kayvon Chason, I mean, I think he still needs a little bit of time. Looks like a huge bust right now, but I mean, the guy was talented when he was at LSU. So I think that there's still an opportunity for him to prove that he is, worth it at the other end of Josh Allen, but he is running out of time. And then in the inside, Foyesei Aluakon was another big signing that they had on the defensive side of the ball that gets me excited. This is the guy who recovered, I think, like 3 onside kicks in one Thanksgiving game. But besides that, he is a pretty decent linebacker for the defense. And they got rid of Miles Jack recently, so Shaquille Quarterman is your other inside linebacker. So Foyesei is the new leader in the middle, I guess. Darius Williams, another big signing. And Shaquille Griffin was a big signing last year for them. So you have two pretty solid corners on the outside. You have Tyson Campbell, who you took with your second round pick last year. So the cornerback position, I think, is pretty set and pretty solid, honestly. You have two number two corners out there, but that's okay because a lot of teams don't even have that. So that's a good start there for the Jaguars. Again, another reason why I'm excited about what they've done with this defense. They didn't really overpay anyone, and they brought in some pretty productive players. Um, Safety though, Andre Cisco needs to get in there because Andrew Wingard isn't doing anything. Okay, and he's not good. And Rayshawn Jenkins, he's getting older. So again, if we can get a good safety, potentially in the second, third round, I think we have to attack that position. But the Jaguars definitely spend their money right for the most part, in my opinion. Besides Christian Kirk, I think they paid him a little too much when they really didn't need to. Um, but I like the way that the Jaguars are trending. It is in the right direction so far. So slight props to Trent Baalke, but I think Doug Peterson has more of a positive influence on this than anything else. So we're gonna go ahead and start this now. When we talk about the safety position, we definitely could take Kyle Hamilton here at number one. Um, but I think when there's a guy like Aiden Hutchinson here at number one, you have to take him now. Had they not franchise tagged Cam Robinson, I would have taken Ikem Ekwonu here at number one, and it's possible that they could even trade back, but I'm not going to do that just so that we can keep it as realistic as possible. I'm going to take Aiden Hutchinson here. Let's stop the dilly-dallying, head into the second round and get our next guy. Look, I know we talked about Kayvon Chason potentially still proving that he can be the guy opposite of Josh Allen, but maybe his role is better off as a rotational guy, playing on those passing downs and getting to the quarterback when he has more fresh legs. That could end up being the role that he plays later on in his career that makes him the money and ends up having him being more productive. So, I don't know. You can't pass up on Hutchinson at number one, especially when you just franchise tag Cam Robinson. So, okay, wow, very interesting. Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett are still here. So is Matt Corral. Obviously, we don't need a quarterback. Wow, Devontae Wyatt. See, here's the thing, guys. At some point, right, when you're a team that's 3-14, even if a certain player doesn't fill a need, this is a team that's rebuilding. You're not gonna win the Super Bowl next year. But if you can take quality players right now, it'll help you down the line. And I know we have a guy in Devon Hamilton and Foloranzu Fadukasi, but if Devontae Wyatt is there at 33, I think you have to take him. Now, I'll take a look at the other options we have here. Obviously, some very talented guys that are still on the board. Like, I would definitely take a Jalen Petre. But I just feel like Devontae Wyatt is just way too much talent to pass up on. I mean, this is a guy who should be taken in the first round, along with all these other quarterbacks. I don't understand why a lot of these players haven't gone yet. But if you can get a Devontae Wyatt in the second round, that would be phenomenal value. And maybe you move some guys around. You know what I mean? Because we take a look at the other part of this defensive line, and I didn't really talk about Malcolm Brown or Dwayne Smoot just because, I mean, they're nothing more than just players to me, unfortunately. Um, but I don't know. See, we're in round 3 now, and Matt Corral is here. Now, I'm not gonna take him. It would be cool. I mean, like, I think that you could like pick him up and then trade him for possibly more. I don't know. Huh. Very interesting the way that this draft has turned out for us. What do we want to do here? It's very tempting to take one of the quarterbacks, even if we don't need one. We don't need any of the running backs either. We have two very quality guys there at that position. Huh. Now, maybe we bring in a linebacker because, like we said, we have Quarterman there as our second inside linebacker. I don't really feel comfortable with that heading into week one. Have a guy to complement Foyese Aluakon a little better. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take Darian Beavers out of Cincinnati. I have him in my top 5 list for the linebackers this year. You know, the guy's intelligent. You can tell it. You can tell that when he plays because he's constantly shooting up the gaps and he's going up and making tackles. He knows where the ball is going to be. He doesn't necessarily have the athleticism to be there before, to create a turnover, get an interception, things like that. But that's why he's a third round pick, But the guy has brains. He knows what he's doing on the field. And I think that's really valuable because, you can be a freak athlete, but if you don't have the brains, it's all for naught. So, I don't know. I think that's a really good value pick there in the third round. What do we want to do here, though, with our last pick? I don't think we take any of the guys at the top of the board. Very interesting. If I'm being completely honest, I think this is a spot for me where I would trade back. I mean, we definitely talked about the need of safety, but I just don't think that there's anyone really worth it here at the spot. I'm going to take a look at this depth chart real quick. Obviously, we could upgrade at one of the tackles, but Walker Little had a second round pick invested in him, so I'm assuming that he's going to play at some point. This is a very weird spot because, we don't need any of these guys, right? So we just want to take the best player available, but then at the same time, those players are going to be very buried in the depth chart. Like, if we take a Matt Corral right now, he's not going to see the field. Breece Hall will not see the field. Isaiah Likely, Trey McBride, those guys won't see the field either. We could bring in a Nicholas Petit-Frere. I'm not very high on him, though, so I'm just not going to do that. Let's just start scrolling down and, see what kind of players that we can bring in that I think could play a potential role on this team. We could potentially bring in another cornerback, in my opinion, because I think after Tyson Campbell, you still do have Trey Herndon, though, who just got re-signed. I know that if you're a Jaguars fan, you'd probably be really upset if I take a Matt Corral right now. I just think it's tremendous value. He's a first-round talent, in my opinion, but again, we really don't need him, and you're not going to keep him as a backup. That just makes absolutely no sense. Maybe we bring in a depth interior offensive lineman. Not really liking any of the guards after that, and maybe bring in someone to compete with Ben Barch. So I think that's what I'm going to do here. A very in-depth analysis for a third-round pick. I think we're going to bring in Ed Ingram here from LSU. Cole Strange is a name that I've heard, but coming from Chattanooga, just a smaller program, I'd rather not, honestly. And there have been guys from smaller programs, obviously, that have been highly productive, but I think I feel a little bit more comfortable taking Ed Ingram at this spot, and I think that was our last pick. That might have been the most intense third-round pick that I've ever done before. But if we take a look at the way that this draft went, now if we had Matt Corral in here, that would be absolutely insane. But we all know damn well that that's not going to happen either. Corral's going to go in the first round, maybe early second. But we look at the way that this draft went. Aiden Hutchinson is an obvious, home run hit right there at the first overall pick. Now, it's possible, guys. If Devontae Wyatt is still there in the second round, okay, you have to take him. The guy's a monster. And He doesn't get as much love as Jordan Davis does because look at Jordan Davis. But Devontae Wyatt is just a phenomenal prospect, in my opinion, and you got to take him. Look, you're a team with 3 wins, okay, and you just need to take the best players available. And that's exactly what we did for this entire draft. Darian Beavers, again, I emphasize his smarts on the field. A big reason why Cincinnati was so good on the defensive side of the ball. And pair him up with Foyesé Oluokun. You have a pretty solid middle of the defense right there. And then Ed Ingram is brought in for competition with Ben Barch. I don't know if Ben Barch has solidified himself as the starting left guard on this team. But even if not, and Ed Ingram just ends up being a depth piece, right? If someone goes down, and it's possible like a Brandon Sheriff goes down again, it's good to have depth at that position. So I really like the pick there with Ed Ingram. Move him around if you have to. But yeah, Jacksonville Jaguars, 3-round mock draft. Really like the way that this turned out. Got some very, very talented players. That's what you got to do when you're down in the dumps picking early in the draft. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this mock draft in the comment section below. It's been the Purple and Gold Podcast, and I'll see you guys all later.